mean, come on, man, you know the thing. Who else is a more patriotic American than these fine folks? I mean, other than maybe Colonel Sanders, because his chicken is Tinger flicking good. Or finger sticking good. I mean, come on, man, you know the thing. They're definitely better than that Bernie Sanders guy. Can you believe I beat that guy in an election? I am Joe Biden, Bo Jiden. As the President of America, I just want to say Jim Jar are cool cats. I am Joe Biden, Bo Jiden. I mean, come on, man, you know the thing. Anyways, I gotta go. I have to go to deliver some tanks or something to that President Zelensky guy. Peace out, hooliganies.
Y'all, it's like the worst day ever. Today just fucking sucks. It's just horrible. It's absolutely horrible. So, good afternoon. I'm not going to say morning because I was on here for about 4 minutes talking to you guys, saying hi, saying good morning. Had the intro going, did the whole morning thing, all of it, and I didn't hit the live button. So I was sitting here for a few minutes talking to you guys without you even being on here. So yeah, it's rough day so far. Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's been rough. I literally sat here for 4 minutes and talked to nobody. And then I saw your text in here, Les Bones. It says, "Where's Jimmy and Sherry?" And I'm like, I'm right here. What are you talking about? I'm like live streaming. And then I looked up at the right corner and it said start live. I was like, I literally just started my live stream for the first 6 or 7 minutes of the show and didn't even hit the go live button. So yay for me. That was fun. Oh God, it's been a day. So, okay. So at least I got you guys in here. Thanks all for coming. Sherry's supposed to be here soon. There's another thing that went wrong. I forgot to send her the invite link to come onto the show. So I sent it like right at 1:00 for her to come in. I think that's why I forgot to hit the go live button on here is because I was like so focused on getting Sherry the invite link. So once she sees it, she should be here. So we just got to wait for her to see it. I totally forgot to send it to her last night or tonight or today. So it's been a morning. I'm trying to come up with news stuff to talk about. Everything in the news is drama and I can't handle it. Like the Anna Turf tweet and the Candace Owen disability video and shit. It's just all drama stuff. Things to distract us from what's really going on. But I have to talk about it anyway, or else I'm going to have like 2 things to talk about today. And then that's it. Nothing else. So, because yeah. And Sherry's still not here yet. So I don't know. It's like I said, it's one of those mornings. I don't even care anymore. I'm done. I'm over it. I want to go back to bed and play my video games. What's up, Cape Socialist? Good to see you here. Good to see you, Willie. Hello, Les Bones. I saw Extra Booyah here at the beginning. Okay, you're just laughing at me now. Your little mistake is minor compared to the Nays Garden. Yeah, I was trying to watch it yesterday, and just that guy, the way that he talks just drives me crazy. I did see the little video drama thing yesterday. I was watching when Les Bones and Warren were like in the comment section of his live stream, having like a little hoopla in there, and then like he unblocked him and then reblocked him and all of that drama shit. More drama. It's just tons of drama. It's so funny though. You guys are crazy. Les Bones is a troll, block him. That's what Def MX said. Les Bones is a troll, block him. Yeah, he's going through a troll phase right now. Just let him have his fun. He'll get over it eventually. What's up, Shake and Bacon? Good to see you. I added your thingies into the songs. So, oh, you must have missed it. What's up, Desert Mantis? Wait, where's Desert? Oh, there it is. You got this. God, man, today has been rest in peace, Nace Garden. Jeez. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. KRTD Shane wants you guys to know that there is super chats. Where's DefMX? He is over. He's over in Twitch on my Twitch channel. Rest in peace, Nace Garden. Oh, I don't even watch that guy, but yesterday was interesting. He doesn't even make you solve riddles. God, where is Sherry? Oh, I feel so bad. I hope she saw my message. Because if she didn't, okay, she did. Thank goodness. I was so scared that she thought that I was like going to cancel today without saying anything. No, don't go say hi, Les Bones. You stay over here. Don't go say hi. Jesus Christ, Les Bones. He's on a roll lately. It's nuts. So what do I got to talk about today? Man, everybody's live streaming right now too. Like I just noticed like Frank's analysis just went live. Nate's Garden is watching or is live streaming right now. It looks like he has a guitar in his hand or something. I know RBN is live. Everybody's live right now. It's a competition today. So, and man, I'm just running out of things to talk about because I am just like getting to a point where I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't even care. But yeah, and it's all just drama stuff, just distractions. It's all distractions. It's all it is. It's just daily distractions. Still waiting for no, oh God. Franco blocked you too. Jesus Christ. You guys can super chat my ass. That's right. You get it, Cape Socialist. KRTD has the highest Blue Wrench to indie viewer ratio. RBN is live streaming with Garland. Yes, I know. Actually, we do not have the highest Blue Wrench to indie viewer ratio. That is Warren. Warren has Blue Wrenched everybody that goes into his comment section. Like if you pop into his comment section and say hi in there, you automatically get a wrench. So not true. Russia's always interesting. I'm gonna block you next. Jesus Christ, you guys. People are all battling in my Twitch channel now. You're gonna live stream earlier, but you had to do your taxes. Aw, boo. Yeah, I tried to watch it a little bit. I got it like about halfway into it, and then I just couldn't watch it anymore. He's just really hard to watch. He just gets angry over just like the smallest things. Like he got angry over masks yesterday, which was crazy to me. It just reminds me of like that like DNC talking point stuff that he was saying yesterday. So, not really somebody I'd be interested in. Desert Mantis, who is Warren, that's extra booyah. I know, right? He even blue wrenched Sam. He hasn't wrenched you yet? All right, we got to get you in there. There's Miss Sherry. No, not Warren Mosler. Extra Booyah. He does a show on YouTube. There, Extra Booyah right here. Warren is some douchebag. Def is not worthy. I mean, if he goes into Warren's chat, he can definitely get wrenched up if he wants to. So I'm pretty sure Warren is up for wrenching people. It's because you're friends with Les Bones. Extra also heard he is some dick. Yeah, I know. Extra hates extra. So no nipple stuff, please, you guys. Jesus Christ. The nipple thing yesterday was hilarious too. Like when Warren was like, he said in the comment section yesterday, he's all nice nipples, and the guy's like, oh, so you're the guy, you've been private messaging me and shit. I was just like, oh my God, this guy thinks that some random dude on the internet has an obsession with his nipples, like for real, and it's freaking hilarious. That guy was losing it yesterday. That shit was so fucking funny. Is wrenching a sex thing? Absolutely, shake and bacon. That's all Warren is good for. He's wrenching people. Oh, that shit was so funny yesterday with the Nays Garden stuff, though. I was like the longest I've ever watched that show. Like longest I've ever watched it. So, but yeah, that shit was funny. And then didn't like somebody made a video about it yesterday too, like there's all 12 seconds later. It's like the guy like talking about how he's like a free speech absolutist, even if it's people that he doesn't agree with, and how he handles it is the biggest part. And then there's all 12 seconds later, and then it's his little battle with like Les Bones and Warren about like how he's gonna block him and shit. Shit was so funny. I know who it actually was, but I'm not gonna like say anything. I'm just gonna let whatever happen. You must retweet this to your God. Yesterday was nuts. Yesterday was hilarious. There might be a future show. Are you gonna do a show today? I know it's Friday, so we might have Mundus Ultra today. It's either today or going to be Sunday. I don't know if he's going to do 2 days a week or if we switched it to 1 day a week. Yeah, the STFU shitlib is the guy that made the video. Yeah, free speech absolutist. Yes, that's what the guy says he was, but then he wasn't really acting like he was. Sorry, Sherry. I'm going to bring you in just a second. Okay. Yeah, so if you're gonna do a show tonight, Willie, let me know and I'll post it up and share it and stuff like that. I know it's Friday, so like I know like quite a few people have shows today. Usually the weekend is like full of stuff. So yeah, just let me know. Absolutist. I don't even know what that word means. Absolutist. I have no idea what that means. Okay. Well, now that Sherry's here, we're gonna bring her in. Don't make fun of me, you guys. And see if she's got anything she wants to talk about before we start getting into the news and stuff. All right. Hello, Sherry.
Hi, Jimmy. How you doing?
Oh, good. Okay, good. I can hear you. All right. I am good. How are you?
I am good. I'm glad. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. My husband distracted me. I'm good.
Okay. Good.
You had a hard week this week, didn't you?
It's just been constant. I think the last month has just been nonstop. So I'm done shoveling snow. I'll tell you that much. I'm over it.
Yeah, I can't say I blame you.
Yeah, there's a lot of us out here on the mountain that are like, all right, we're done. We're going back to the city. Like, this was not what we were wanting. It just doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop at all.
It's so freaky,
Mm-hmm.
And then we've had all these years where there wasn't enough snowpack, and now it all comes in 1 year.
Yep. And our we can't handle it out here. The landslides and the flooding, and we had like things that were really dried out, like water areas, but now they're overfilled and they're flooding over, and it was just too much too quick. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And then with all the fires that we've had, there's no roots to hold on to any of the water, so it just comes right off.
Yeah, right.
It's been rough.
That's really a sad situation.
I know. And then as soon as you think you're done, it's like it snows again. Like I think at the beginning of this week, I went outside and the rain has just been getting rid of all the snow, and I'm just like, okay, wow, it finally feels normal again. And then just overnight we got dumped with like 10 inches. So I went and bundled back up on Wednesday and went out there and shoveled some more snow. I was like, damn, I'm done. I'm so done. We got people already on Facebook groups today like, hey, the berms are too big. Can you guys help us? And I'm like, God damn it, you guys, come on. Like, you should have been out there yesterday doing it while the snow was still fluffy. Now it's ice. Like, of course it's going to be really hard to get those giant berms out. Like, you should have done it yesterday, but people. So Yeah, but it's all right. It's nice. It's sunny today, so we'll see how it goes.
It's
The
really
wind
gray
too.
and overcast here. It's been
Aw.
over. It's been overcast a lot, but it's warming up. So
Okay. Yeah, extra bully. I saw that no Chicago corner tonight, so that sucks. I know. But they said they'll be back on Tuesday, I believe. So, or Wednesday. I think it's Tuesday or Wednesday is the day they do their show. But yeah, they'll be back on next week. So I saw that.
oh, hi Willie.
Les
I'm sorry.
Bones wants to know. Les Bones wants to know if you're married.
Yes, I'm afraid so. But I finally, after like 30 years, got myself a nice wedding ring.
Yay! Good for you. Les Bones has been on a roll trying to like find himself a streamer who's single. So we're out here looking for him. It's so funny. He's just on a troll roll. It's hilarious. So yeah, he wants to find himself a single female a streamer that he can love forever. He's so ridiculous. Did you have anything? I know we didn't get to talk ahead of time, but did you have anything that you wanted to bring up? I saw the thing this morning you sent to me on Facebook, but it was a Zoom call, and I hopped in on the Zoom call, and I got scared and I jumped out because I didn't want to join a
Oh,
Zoom call
yeah.
without
I
permission.
I just thought we would put a plug out about that MMT thing that's going on.
Okay.
Let me see, what was it? I just thought it'd be nice for us to talk, to mention it. So let me get on my thing and see exactly what it was. It's something going on at Willamette College, I believe. An MMT.
Yeah. Okay. So Jeff
Mm,
Epstein put a post in the Modern Monetary Theory Intro to MMT Facebook group. It says tomorrow, or would be today, is the conference from organizer Rohan Gray. He says, I'm excited
mhm.
that the Our Money, Our Future, Promoting Economic Democracy in Oregon Through Public Banking conference is less than 24 hours away. I apologize for the lateness and length of this email, but we are looking forward to having a location or having you join us soon, either virtually or in person. The conference is taking place at Willamette University for all 3 days. However, please note that each day is in a different building. Here, let me share my screen really quick so people
Okay.
can kind of read it with us too.
Yeah.
Here we
And,
go.
it also says that program details are available at ourmoneyyourfuture.org.
Yeah, right here at the bottom. So Our Money. Okay, program details are available. Okay. So it looks like, let's see if I can make this bigger. Of course, you're just going to make the rest of it bigger, not anything I need. Okay. Okay, so this is like the itinerary of each one. And this is Eastern time, right?
I believe it's probably Pacific time. Wait, let me see. Because since it's in Oregon,
Oh, okay.
but I am not sure exactly. So let me see.
Okay, so it's Friday, so are they on day 1 right now?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So it looks like this is what's happening today. Session 1A, money, banking, and everything in between. Session 1B, public banking for public purpose, promoting democratic capital formation. Then session 1C, public banks and the public fisc. How can they work together? Well, that's cool. So is it in person and it's also through Zoom?
Yeah, I believe so. So I'm gonna type in the email. I'm gonna type in the address into the stream. So this is the website address. And if anybody's interested, they can go look it up. I imagine that there's going to be stuff there that will be online that they'll be able to watch after the fact. So, or at least look into. So,
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do it right. Oh, you already got it. Okay.
No, yeah, no, that was you. You did that. You're right.
Oh, okay. All right.
Let's see, March 23rd to the 25th, Our Money, Our Future, Promoting Economic Democracy in Oregon Through Public Banking, a 3-day conference hosted by Willamette Economics, Willamette Law School, and Atkinson's Grad School of Management. Then we'll head
Yeah.
over to the Our Money, Our Future website, so I can check that, or we can check that out as well.
Okay. And that is, Willamette is where Rohan Gray teaches.
Okay.
So that's why it's being held there, I assume.
How many, do you know, like roughly how many students go to this school?
I really don't. I don't know much about it. I think it's a private college, I believe.
Okay.
But I've heard about it. I just don't know much about it. But it
Okay.
would be in a nice location.
Right. Oh, they got Stephanie Kelton heading out there. Nathan Tankis. There's some names in here. I have no idea who they are. Raul Carrillo.
Yeah, Raul, he is one of those people that's with the money on the left group.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some names in here I don't know.
Okay.
That's crazy. That's awesome, though, that they're doing this. I had no idea.
I didn't either until just before I posted that thing on Facebook.
So this is like MMT and banking. Like, what with the whole banking thing? What does it have to do?
Well, what they're talking about is having public banking. So we don't have to have our banking system privatized. We could certainly have public banking, and in some cases, actually, I think it's South Dakota. I believe they have a state bank, and so there are. But there's absolutely no reason why banks have to be in the private sector. They
Right.
And in fact, it seems to me that I think they probably would be best functioning as a public monopoly or something like that, because they benefit so much from the economies of scale, and that's why one of the reasons why they've gotten so huge, that and lack of antitrust and lack of regulation and everything.
Right.
But the problem is that in the private sector, we of course have the profit motive, and the thing that's tricky is when it's in the private sector, you have a lot of people that know how to make money and know how to take advantage of people making, who have money. And so, we've been seeing that for the last 40, 50 years.
Right. That's what I always think too. Like if a bank is, it shouldn't be, its goal should not be to make as much profit as possible if you are a bank who is quote unquote, because even if you think about it, quote unquote, it does kind of create money as well with interest in loans and in bonds and things like that. Technically, quote unquote, it does create money. So if it's creating legitimate money that is usable currency in our in our economy, then that shouldn't have a profit motive whatsoever.
Yeah. What banks do, if you think about it, you know who Michael Hudson is, right? So, and he's talked a lot about the productive part of the economy and the unproductive part of the economy. And so when he talks about that, he's going back to the classical economists. And what they envisioned was there are economic actors who produce things that we buy, we consume, and they make our lives better. But then there are other sectors that, we're considered to be unproductive, just in the fact that they're not actually producing things. They're not, actually making cars or, restaurant, they're not in a restaurant producing meals or anything. Instead, what they're doing is they're providing services that kind of are in the background, almost like an overhead kind of thing. And banks, really, that's what they are. They don't really produce things. I mean, you can say, oh yeah, they produce money, but money is not a real resource.
Right.
It is a debt obligation, but it's not a real resource. So what banks do is they facilitate the production process by, in theory, lending money in what is supposed to be its best use. But of course, what we have is we have a banking system now that's really basically been allowed to run amok, especially the shadow banks. So the JP Morgans and Goldman Sachs, those companies, much of what they do isn't even lending money. It's just really gambling. Is really all it is. It's shifting money around, and so it's not even producing. It's not even providing a function that enables other parts of the economy to be productive. It's basically just extracting. And we have allowed our banking system to become an extractive mechanism, and so it seems to me that I think, that really, if we want to have an economy that works best, and if we want to have an economy where the banking sector is contributing, we either have to have it really highly regulated, or we should just make it, we should just nationalize it. And to me, it seems like nationalizing it would be a good thing. And it's not an unusual thing. As I said, there's the Bank of South Dakota. We have banking that is sort of publicly owned, I guess, like you could say. Like, for instance, I was in a credit union at Iowa State University, and so that wasn't really a for-profit organization because it was a credit union, and so it really just functioned for the benefit of the people who had their money in the bank. And so we do have this stuff already, but what we have done is we've allowed these private banks to go completely out of control. We have not regulated them, and they've just gone nuts,
Right.
And our thinking, we've been idolizing wealth so much for so long, that when people like bankers make all this money, there's a tendency to think, oh, these are great people. They make a lot of money. Like that guy who was the head of Lloyd, what was his name? Oh, darn it. He was the head of one of the banks, and I can't remember which bank it was. But he said, I think it was Goldman Sachs. He said, our employees are the most productive in the world. And it was just ridiculous. It's just, they set it up so they can pay themselves a lot of money, But that doesn't mean they're producing anything. They're just making money because they can.
Absolutely. We haven't produced stuff. We barely produce anything in America anymore.
Yeah.
I was just watching the news this morning about those eye drops that are like killing people right now. They're all from India. And my husband was like, why are we getting eye drops from India? I was like, babe, we don't produce shit. We don't buy we buy everything. We don't produce anything.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And so, what's going on now, I didn't actually prepare anything because kind of like I got so overwhelmed with all the things that are going on this week. So it's like, So I didn't really
know, and it's hard to try to figure out what's a distraction and what's real news, and it's just too much.
Yeah.
It's way too much.
We're in a period where there's just a lot of upheaval. And so we don't know how things are going to play out. And there was but there was, I don't know if you had some stuff already. There is a really good interview that I saw with both Michael Hudson and Dennis Kucinich that kind of is talking about some of this stuff.
Was
We
it the
could do.
Katie show?
I'm sorry?
Was it on the Katie Halper show?
No.
Okay. I think
Wait,
Dennis
no,
Kucinich
maybe
recently
it
went on her show.
was. Maybe it was. I don't know because I haven't
I just
seen
saw
it.
him on her show yesterday.
Okay, well, this is an interview with Dennis Kucinich and Michael Hudson. And there's an older man who interviewed them. So I don't know if it was on
Okay, no.
Kitty Halper or not. I can
No.
send you the link.
Yeah.
Oh, we can talk about that if you want.
Yeah, I'm down.
It's a little long, but we can, you can speed it up. Okay, so let me send you the link here. I'll send it to you in Messenger.
Okay, cool. Potato Guzzler 1, nice to see you. No, that is not a shower curtain. That is just my regular curtains. No shower curtain. We don't produce, but we reproduce. Definitely. What's up, Jim? Good to see you. Definitely agree with getting rid of plastics and using hemp. Lana X finally made it. Thanks for stopping by. Shane, good to see you. Who else? All right, I think that's it. Burton, stop eating my cord. I'm about to lose my earpiece because of my cat. Yeah, he's already pulling it out of the computer. All right, where are you sending it to me at?
I sent it to you in Messenger.
Okay, let's get over to Messenger. Here we go. Hey, sir, this is a Wendy's. Okay, here we go. On the banking collapse with Dennis Kucinich.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, I think they just did the same thing with Katie Halper.
This is the first episode of the real Gray Zone. You look at the color of my hair rather than those so-called journalists, Max Blumenthal and Aaron Matte and the others. But I guess I won't do that. On a more serious note, this is a very difficult time right now because all of a sudden we're starting to see a different type of financial crisis. And I wanted you two to talk because, Dennis, you were in Congress for 16 years. You did some of the most withering cross-examination I've ever seen of bank and Federal Reserve type individuals. Some of them were literally sweating because you asked probing, deep questions that your staff had prepared, and you don't accept any PAC money. So you had no reluctance at all to get right to the nitty gritty of what was happening in the first bank meltdown, that Michael wrote about. I have Michael here because he is a great economist, one of the 8 economists in the world who predicted the housing crisis. He did a cover story in Harper's Magazine that was stunning with charts and graphs and explaining exactly why the housing bubble would collapse as it did. I was going to note, Michael became famous for first writing this book called Super Imperialism in 1972, which became a how-to manual for the State Department and the rest of our government about literally monetary imperialism. How would we become the reserve currency? It becomes, and of course, Michael has so many other books. His more recent one I love is, and forgive them their debts, from Our Father, and we'll talk.
Hey, Lana, I do have a Discord. Let me figure out how to invite you to it. I have oh my God, cat. Stop it. It's on Warren's server. Let me copy it and I'll put it in the chat for you. That's our little hangout. Les Bones knows. He's like running that shit. But if you guys want to join my Discord, cat, I fucking hate you. Jesus Christ. If you guys want to join my Discord, there it is. You guys are more than welcome. That's my little what section in Discord. And if you guys want to play some video games, I am always down to play some fucking video games. Les Bones and Shake and Bacon suck ass cheese. Warren is playing City Skylines literally right now because Discord just told me, and it's cheating on him, and it told me. So Warren's playing video games right now, but nobody wants to play video games with me.
Talk about that in a moment. And my favorite that every politician should read, okay, is The Bubble and Beyond, because it breaks down exactly what the financial capitalist system is about today. We're no longer industrial capitalists. It's financial capitalism of skimming off money. So I wanted to gather the two of you together because you bring these bookend ideas of what happens in the legislature, which is pretty corrupt, purchased by big money, banking and oil and everyone else. And what happens, what is the economics behind this? I'll just start with Michael, just asking you the question as the sort of the ground rules, sort of laying the block work.
Exactly, Les Bones. We can get her to play Valheim with us. I think you can get up to like 10 or 50 people in there at once.
Why did these three banks collapse?
Well, because of the fact that the Federal Reserve tried to finally end an era. And the era was the 13 years of quantitative easing.
I am definitely the night
followed
owl.
from Obama's decision to bail out the banks in 2009. The idea was the banks had made so many bad loans that they were insolvent. And so the Federal Reserve began to flood the market with liquidity and spent $9 trillion pumping bank credit into the market so that they could raise housing prices for Americans and save the banks from losing money on their mortgages. And they created a bond boom, the biggest bond market boom in history, by reducing interest rates from about 7% way down to zero. And you had the stocks and bonds that the wealthiest 1% own soaring in price. And that zero interest rate policy of flooding the market with credit for the banks is why the economy was polarizing between the 1% or the 10% of the population that owns most of the stocks and bonds and the rest of the population.
So Michael, just hold on a minute. What you're describing is an underlying structural issue that not only the Fed, the government are helping to pick winners and losers, but they're also accelerating the wealth of the country upwards.
The wealth is held really by the financial and insurance and real estate sector. And the wealth of the country really is made by who owns this wealth? The wealth are the savings.
I didn't out you, Warren. Fucking Discord tattled on you.
The wealth of the creditor class is the debt of the 99%. So when they talk about wealth, all this wealth takes the form of debt that's owed by the 99%. So you could say that what's been growing is debt as well as wealth. It depends what side of the balance sheet you're going to look at and how you're going to look at how it's distributed.
As Dennis was just saying, though, the wealth is being redistributed upward by turning everyone into a debtor to a creditor class. They collect the rentier income, as you describe in all your books, Michael.
Yeah.
And if they ever want to foreclose, they can take everything. I mean, BlackRock today has, $10 trillion of assets, and they're buying up homes. So are we going to become basically a renter society where we're basically indentured servants?
Well, BlackRock began by buying up homes of the 8 or 9 million people that Obama evicted from their houses by breaking his promise to write down the junk mortgage loans to realistic market prices. And instead of writing down the loans, he invited his bankers and campaign contributors to the White House and said, "I'm the only guy protecting you from the mob with the pitchforks," namely mainly the Black and Hispanic populations that had voted for him. And so he left the bad loans on the book, evicted the families. Their properties were bought up largely by absentee landlord private capital firms and by BlackRock and companies like that.
Well, let's back up a little bit on that, Michael, because as chairman of the Domestic Policy Subcommittee during in the wake of the subprime meltdown, what we found out is that banks were going into neighborhoods in the African American community, and with no doc, low doc loans that enabled people to get a better home, in some cases the home of their dreams, without giving people a fair chance to see if they could actually afford it. And then, of course, they booked those loans and then they bundled them into collateralized debt obligations. And then, furthermore, Wall Street turned that into derivatives, pyramided the market, the thing collapses. There's a call on the loans. People can't pay. Defaults are going on all over the country. Cleveland was the epicenter of the subprime meltdown, especially in the Black community. And all of a sudden, the wealth that people had embedded in their homes, they lost them. Whole neighborhoods were laid waste. They were stripped of their value in terms of pipes and copper and anything that ghouls could carry away. Then came scavengers who went into the neighborhoods, bought the homes at the shells at a rock bottom, made some minor repairs to it and flipped them to create another opportunity and still more victims. So what's happened is the financial community and the financialization of our economy, focusing on where the wealth that most Americans have in their homes, has been able to suck that money out and financialize it, turning the whole country and Wall Street into one great casino. And as a result, going back to the point you're making, the wealth of the country is just accelerating upwards, and the government has basically let this happen. The government, when it picks winners and losers, it sided with Wall Street against the people of the country.
But Dennis, they were able
You're
to
absolutely
That's so crazy to hear them talk about how much the banks like helped themselves out and just trashed and pummeled the regular people when we hear what SVB and the Swiss bank just recently got and all the people that invested into that, that
Yeah.
pisses me off.
Yeah. And, after immediately after the financial crisis, when they passed Dodd-Frank, well, Barney Frank, he's, I think, a lobbyist for a bank, or he's on the board of a bank or something like that, who, you so, he was like setting himself up for a job, making lots of money.
Yeah.
And I mean, they do that kind of stuff all the time. That's part of the corruption. It's disgusting, the many ways in which they are corrupt, and the way the people don't understand, because the media never covers it, because the media is, basically covering up for them. So
Right.
now let me also say, I wanted to back up. Did you understand? I don't know if you understood what was going on when he was talking about the bonds and the value of the bonds. Do you know how bonds work? Do you
All
mind
I understand with that is that when interest rates are low, they make more money in the interest of the bond. But when interest rates are high, like what's happening right now, they're freaking out because the interest that they're making off of these bonds is a lot lower.
Okay. Well, what this is what happens is a bond is a debt instrument. Typically, it comes due on a specific date. Okay.
Right. Like a
And
10-year or a 5-year or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it can be traded.
Now, my
And so
question with bonds is really quick side note is okay. So when I learned about bonds was from Stephanie Kelton with the whole you are the government and you give out $100 that year and you tax back $90, but you can bond out the rest of the $10 that's left over. My question is what goes on with that? Why does the government, if it's giving out money and needs money in circulation, why is it trying to get back that $10 from people just to give the people who own the pieces of paper that said I paid that $10 still gets money off of it? That's what doesn't make sense to me.
yeah. In there's multiple reasons. And some of them have to do with managing the money supply at the time for maybe different reasons. Another reason is, I mean, it provides a safe investment for people who have money and can afford to buy it. The other thing is that the bonds are helpful in international trade, because, for instance, with China, when we would buy things from China, the goods come over here, the money goes over there. They don't really need dollars, but
Right.
they don't necessarily always want to get rid of the dollars, so they can buy bonds. So it's a good way for like other governments and stuff to it helps to facilitate the trade, because they have an easy mechanism an easy place to store the money. So there's different reasons why we have these bonds.
Yeah, but how much bonds are in other countries right now because we don't produce? So what are they buying from us?
Well, they're not buying from us. That's the issue. We're buying from them. If I
So
said,
they're just accumulating bonds.
yeah, right.
And then
So
that's why the government can go around saying that we have debt in China.
Right. It really comes about because we buy things from China.
Right.
And we don't have much that we're selling back to them. Now, we actually provide a lot of agricultural goods to them. We sell a lot of animal feed. We sell a lot of meat, a lot of different things. So the agricultural sector is typically in a net surplus, meaning that we usually sell more abroad than we buy from other countries. So in other words, our agricultural exports are typically, or have been recently, typically exports are higher than imports. So we have a net exports situation. But as you said, from the soybeans, yeah, they buy soybeans from us.
Okay.
And
They
so,
earn, yeah, see, and Amber says they earn interest on those bonds, so it's
right,
it's a safe for their dollars.
right,
It's
right.
just so weird to me how, like, I know that it happens. I know that they do it. I just don't understand the meaning of it, because now there's just, this extra spare $10 that could have been brought into our own economy now is being held as bond with interest in China right now, and they're still making more US dollars off of that bond, even though they're in China. Like, it just, some things that I know it happens. It's just hard to comprehend why.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's basically just another form of holding money.
Okay.
Is really what it is. And sometimes there are reasons outside the actual money situation that you want to have those bonds, because they offer some flexibility in dealing with money and stuff like that. So for instance, like with companies, they can issue bonds. And so when you're a company, there are different ways you can raise money. You can raise money by issuing stocks. You can raise money by going to the bank and borrowing from them, or you can raise money by issuing bonds. And so, companies, if they're when they're big companies, this is when they're doing these things, there's going to be good reasons why they choose to raise money in any one particular way, and it may have tax advantages and all kinds of stuff. I don't really know all about it, but the bonds basically offer another monetary tool that can be used, that can be helpful. And so,
It just seems unnecessary.
well, and actually, the fact that we have the central bank actually, uh, it's one of the ways that they control the money supply with the big company, with the big banks, Citibank and stuff like that. Because if they want to
Okay.
take money out of the economy, what they can do is they can sell bonds to these big banks, and the banks get the bonds. The money gets taken out of circulation.
And that's usually like in an inflation or something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
But
that's
just to try to bring the value of the dollar back up to where it was previously.
well, maybe, but it really is about basically allowing the amount of money. It may be with inflation. Let's just leave it that for now. There's more
Okay.
reasons.
I know. It's like a spider web. It's so nuts.
So, and but the buying and selling of treasury bonds, like we're talking about here, this is called open market operations, and it's one of the major tools that the Federal Reserve has available to it. And so you've heard, when you've heard about this, you may have heard about open market operations. That's what this is. It's creating a market for these bonds so that the US can have some control. It's one of the ways they can have some control over the actual supply of money in the economy.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
Like
the reason, I was
Sorry.
just saying, the reason why the bonds, what I always get confused with bonds myself, because
Sorry.
there's a negative relationship between the price and the yield of the bonds. So in other words, the bonds are issued, so it's like a debt instrument. You buy the bond, and you're essentially lending money to the entity that issued the bond, and it's fixed for a certain time, and it's fixed for a certain amount of interest. But if you want to sell it, you can sell it But the price, if you sell it, is going to depend on, it's also going to depend on the interest rates. And so what's going on is what they're doing is when they change the interest rate, that affects the value of the bonds.
Right.
And so what Michael Hudson was saying there is they raise the interest rate. Since there's a negative relationship, they're actually making those bonds, the price of those bonds.
So nobody makes any interest. Haha.
So anyway.
Haha, people, you can't make free money. Sucks to be you. Okay.
And their shareholders did well, and so did the executives. You're being a little petty, I think.
Yeah, right. Well,
Just because the American people you represent got screwed, who cares?
Well, that was one of the issues in the hearings that we had investigating the subprime meltdown. The issues of compensation, of whether the public was misled, investors were misled. There was, and no one wanted to take responsibility. Ultimately, I mean, they said they did, but they didn't really want to take legal responsibility. Whether it was AIG, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Lehman Brothers, that whole sordid situation went on. The government looked the other way. The Fed looked the other way. They were supposed to be monitoring lending practices, and the American people, homeowners, just took it right in the neck. And in terms of the Black community, the wealth of African Americans around the country just crashed during this period.
Well, that's exactly what happened. And as you just pointed out, not only the Black Americans, but for 13 years, the entire economy has been polarizing. And the growth in wealth, there's been a huge inflation, the largest inflation in American history. And it hasn't been price inflation. It hasn't been consumer price inflation. It's asset price inflation for stocks and bonds and real estate. And the government says, well, look at how much richer Americans are getting. They can afford, their homes are worth more and more and more. But all of this home pricing has been financed by debt. And so the homeowners who are taking out mortgages to buy the homes own a smaller and smaller and smaller proportion of their home in equity. It's almost all debt. Well, the question is, why did the Fed end all of this? Here you have the economy's polarizing, great for the political campaign contributors. Why did it end it? Well, it ended it because Federal Reserve Chairman Powell said there's a problem. 2 million Americans have to lose their job in order to create enough unemployment so that wage levels are not going to go up, and they will not rise in keeping with the inflation of oil prices and home prices and food prices that result from America's sanctions against Russia that have raised prices all over the world, and from the monopoly pricing. So the Fed said we have to raise the interest rates in order to bring on a recession, lower wage levels. And it didn't seem to have occurred to him that you're not only going to lower wage rates, but when interest rates go up, bond prices go down. And
would you explain,
stock
Michael,
prices go
one
down.
second? Would you explain the two major points you just made? And one was about monopoly prices. And the fact is that there was corporate gouging of profits from monopolies was one of the key, and also the supply chain problems that occurred because of the Ukraine war. Okay, and explain how those are actually a larger factor, and they're doing it on the back of American workers. They're going to, quote, stem this problem on the back of American workers by driving up inflation. I thought Elizabeth Warren was very good in hearings actually last week on that.
Well, she was attacking
that's stupid too. Like Janet Yellen, I recently watched something about Janet Yellen. She was getting a committee hearing on her, and she had to answer some questions and shit. And yeah, that's what they were talking about. Was what they were just talking about. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
No, that's fine.
Good food prices.
That's a good point to bring up. I think it's an important point to think about, because what they're saying is we want to control inflation by keeping wage. One of the ways we want to do it is we want to try to keep wage growth down. Well, so what Jay Powell was saying a few weeks ago was we don't want wage growth to exceed 2%. Well, if inflation is 6%, what's happening? Your real income is going down 4%. And what happens is the people who are lending you the money, so the credit card companies, they're the ones that are gaining because they get this interest, this extra interest. Mm-hmm. And, their income is going up. So, and he talks about that too. It is that, when you basically we have a society of debtors and debtees. And, if you are the person that's borrowing the money, if your wages can't keep up, it's a difficult thing. The thing about the 1970s is that labor had enough power that these big unions, they actually negotiated cost of living increases. And so those cost of living increases meant that labor could make up for, their income could keep up with inflation. But what happened was the class that does the lending, the bankers, they were getting screwed because people had, if you had a mortgage that you got in 1970 at 3% interest, in 1980 you're still paying 3% interest, and the bank is taking the hit. And so that's why this monetary stuff has been going on since 1980, when they brought in Paul Volcker, because basically it was a class war and the workers won. And now they're not going to ever let that happen again.
Right.
That's what's going on.
Right. Yeah, well, that definitely makes sense. So it's just it's wild to me to see like Janet Yellen saying that the Fed needs to consistently raise interest rates, to bring down inflation, and blaming it on us and making us have to take the blame for it and pay for it. And lose our jobs and lose our incomes and stuff, instead of blaming it on what it actually was, which was the supply chain problems that we had and the price gouging, even during a pandemic. Like
Right.
we got completely price gouged. I was,
Right.
just on the news just yesterday, they're still talking about companies and people that are being sued and having to pay back like hundreds of thousands, almost millions of dollars in pandemic money that was supposed to be given to regular people. Just the Los Angeles Police Department stole so much money of the pandemic money that was supposed to go to regular people. But then we also got price gouged. So we didn't get paid fully. We got $2,000 in 2 years, and we got price gouged. So that to me is what the cause of inflation is. But then, you got Janet Yellen and the Fed over there raising interest rates every month, saying it's our fault and we've got to pay for it.
Right. And keep in mind, we've had all these years, more than 40 years of not enforcing antitrust laws.
Mm-hmm.
So that has allowed these companies to get bigger and bigger. And pretty much every industry now is very concentrated. And so concentration means that they have a lot more influence over the prices than a competitive industry would have. Mm-hmm. And so, because you don't have a choice, if you want to buy, a product from a certain company, you got maybe one or two, at best, maybe three different, choices to pick from. And they try to make it even more. They try to make it, niche marketing is a good way to kind of ramp this stuff up. Because they're trying to identify specific segments, and they're trying to make themselves the only one in that segment. That's what niche marketing is all about. But we have the fact that we have not allowed that we have not been engaging in antitrust enforcement has just made this whole thing so much worse. And there's also an indirect way that it affects it too, because when you have these big companies, they have more influence on the wages, they have more influence on policies, but they also, they're able to, like, a lot of them don't invest in their companies. They send the work overseas. And so what's happening is, they have these multiple ways that have really kind of put a restriction on the supply side. So, we have not been investing in the productive capacity. And so we have less and less productive capacity. And antitrust and failure to enforce that enables them to do it more easily. It also enables them to charge these higher prices.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree.
where you can all follow when you go to the store. The food prices for eggs and other crops are going way up, but the farmers aren't getting more. The dairy farmers are going out of business. The chicken farmers are going out of business. There are a couple of monopolies for the food distribution business, and these monopolies have simply taken a much larger chunk of the prices that they supply to the stores. And right across the board, the pharmaceutical companies have a monopoly, and they say, we're going to raise the prices for our drugs because we anticipate there's going to be an inflation. And right down the line, for almost every kind of product that is a monopoly, the monopolist said, well, the Fed says there's going to be an inflation. We're going to raise our prices now. And the prices have been risen without any of their costs rising.
It's kind of like an economic bank run like they just had recently, but in economics, they're like, oh, there's going to be inflation, so we need to raise our prices now. Oh, the bank's going to collapse. We need to get our deposits out now.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things about inflation is there's this expectations aspect of it.
But that shit turns it into self-fulfilling prophecies. That's what pisses me off about this stuff is like, because you're expecting it to happen, you're going to make it happen.
Exactly. And that's how it can get really out of control. And we don't want that to happen. You probably heard some of the MMT economists talk about Koletsky. I don't know if you recall that name.
I do, but I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. He was an economist who basically came up with a lot of the same stuff that John Maynard Keynes came up with. But he recognized that there was this potential for a political problem that could eventually occur. That's what the 1970s was about. We saw that I shouldn't say just 1970s and 80s. 1980s was the political response to the 1970s. So it was actually exactly what Koletsky was saying. If you let this stuff get out of control, there's going to be a response. We were never prepared for that response because we thought, especially in my generation, we thought, hey, things are just going to keep going. This is America, land of the free. But we didn't understand all those many things that were going on behind the scenes, partly because we didn't have the internet. So there's a lot of stuff we couldn't get access to. A lot of it was sparse. And, honestly, who would have thought? I would in 1980, I wouldn't have believed it.
Yeah, I was just saying that on the show yesterday because I grew up with that thinking that it was always going to be this awesome. I'm a 90s kid. So, we grew out running around in the streets with no shoes on, digging for worms and, all that crazy stuff, thinking this is just going to be the life forever. Come to realize, oh no, like my kids can't, like the reality check of, oh, this isn't what life is really like was very disheartening for me as a grown up. So I don't want my kids to, think that everything's going to be rainbows and sunshines and butterflies their whole life because it's not.
Yeah.
And but yeah, you're right though. And what really sucks too is about this, like this whole economic situation with antitrust and stuff is the deregulation processes. I definitely have noticed that, like, even though we don't want to admit it, the majority of Americans are still either conservative or libertarian and independent in some way. And corporations and companies seem to have figured out a way to combine the ideology of small government with deregulation. And that's been the hard part to try to fight is like, you've got, these powerful white country boys who, if they don't want to admit it, but they've got a lot of power in this country. If you're a white male, you have a lot of power in this country, same as being a white female. And they go around saying, I want a small government, I want a small government, smaller government, smaller government, but not realizing that with smaller government means less regulations on these companies to be able to give them the freedom to violate these antitrust laws.
Right. And one of the things that happened in the 60s and 70s, we had the Earl Warren Court, and there was a lot of progressive decisions that were being made then. We also had, we had the rise of these various civil rights movements, and progress was being made on those things. And we also had a really active environmental movement. And so a lot of legislation was put in place. And these things made a big difference. They really did. But by the 1980s, 90s, people kind of forget why those things are there to begin with. Because we don't have the rivers catching on fire anymore. Lake Erie hasn't gone dead, and so people kind of forget about that. Well, it came about because of the regulations. And I'm not saying we should always have lots of regulations. We should have regulations that are effective, but you can't just let these people run amok.
Right. And you can't let them self-regulate either, because they're not going to. Look at East Palestine. Norfolk Southern has been putting out their own paid for research of the area, saying everything is clean and the air is fine, and it's not. And that's why we need regulations, is for independent investigations.
That's right. And let me also bring up one more point. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, but
no, you're good. This is awesome.
One of the things, if you think about it, what's the difference if there's a set amount of money in the economy and, like 90% of it goes to the wealthy and 10% goes to the rest of us? What effect does that have on the economy? The issue is that wealthy people don't spend their money, and, I mean, they save it, they try to protect it, that's understandable, but they have so much money, they're not gonna spend a lot of it. So a lot of that money, this is one of the issues that I think is really a good point that MMT brings up, but I don't recall them. I mean, there's probably been some videos where they actually said this, but I think it bears repeating, is that if all this money is up at the top, nothing's happening with it. It's not circulating. It's not doing any good. And so the rest of the people who have the 10% of the money, they spend it all. And when they spend it, they create jobs for other people. And so equity is an important economic issue, because you can't have a good economy when a small percent of the people have all the money. And of course, that's why when we increase the money supply, it matters who gets the money. So throughout all these things since the financial crisis, all this money that's been going into the economy, it's all been going up, and so it's not the case that it's causing inflation, except that it's causing inflation in what the rich people invest in. And that, so we have the stock market booming, and we have lots of yachts being sold and expensive high-end real estate and things like that. So, but the average person is basically only spending the little bit that they have to spend.
Right.
And they can't do anything more. So the average person is not bringing up the price.
Yeah. And that's why I say we live in a matrix world, because man, the news and the government will be like, the market is booming, everybody's doing great. But yeah, it's that 10% that's able to buy yachts and art pieces and whatever kind of assets they want, while we're stuck with that, little bit of 10% of flowing in and out of our economy with the rest of us poor people, because all we have is that 10%, while the the 1% has the 99% of money, and they're out there buying yachts and shit. So of course, to the government, it looks like the economy is booming, even though most of the people are struggling. That's why I say we live in a matrix world, man, because it's just not what reality says it is. It really isn't.
We do. And unfortunately, since the financial crisis, the people who have a lot of money, these financial interests, they came to realize, there's all this residential real estate we can buy. Maybe in the past they invested in commercial real estate, or maybe they invested in like big housing complexes. But since the financial crisis, they're buying up regular homes, and so that's their asset, and they're bringing those prices up. So the cost of housing goes up for all the rest of us, but our income doesn't go up.
Right. I don't think Airbnb helped either.
Yeah. So
Man, taking a regular house that somebody can live with or live in and charge them per night, like that's crazy.
yeah, really. So anyway, that's also what Michael Hudson's talking about here.
Okay, let's continue.
just because they can do it.
But look at the compounding issues here. So President Biden makes the decision to pour over $140 billion plus into this enterprise trying to overthrow Russia. That, of course, and the blowing up of Nord Stream pipeline set the stage for a sharp increase in energy prices, which also set the stage for a sharp increase in food prices apart. Okay. And then you go to the monopoly factors that are working in the economy. And that's why people end up paying so much for eggs and bread and everything else, because there's a compounded thing. You raise another point. You know, it's a long-standing canard of the Fed that a certain amount of unemployment is necessary for the proper functioning of the economy. Well, that's easy for the people in Wall Street to say.
Right.
But tell that to Main Street, where people are struggling, you know, to put gas in a car, to pay their mortgage, to feed their families. And so there's a kind of a destructive undermining of Main Street once more, in the way that a street hollows out before it collapses. But the hollowing out of the equity, as you mentioned, that people have in their homes, the hollowing out of savings, the hollowing out of pensions, all of this sets the stage for a financial collapse. And the money that was pumped in during the COVID period actually belied the fact that people were just, then were desperate. And now, as that period seems to be over, they're going to be more desperate. As a matter of fact, as we're speaking, the government's getting ready to cut in half the food benefits that people had with the supplementary nutrition benefits. So people won't be able to have the food they needed. Meanwhile, back on Wall Street, you screw up the management of a bank. You don't have proper accounting standards. You have inadequate due diligence. You have a lack of regs. There's changes in the law. The Fed's going policies that are working against the country. And Main Street gets hit once again. I really think that we have the preconditions here for a political revolt in this country.
I want to introduce something, Dennis. You wrote 696 pages.
I agree. I'm just waiting for people to get on to my level. That's all I'm waiting for. He's so goddamn right. Jesus Christ. That was a good one.
Book called The Division of Light and Power, which occurred when you basically saved the Cleveland municipal light system from its corporate competitor, which basically used what is now seen as illegal means to buy it out and destroy any competition. By the way, this competitor recently has put $60 million into bribing Ohio officials. That's a whole other matter. You stood up against them because you did not take any PAC money from these groups. Can you explain to me, and I'd like both of you to comment on this, is this contagion and this reluctance of Congress to deal with this issues of the banks and the incredibly dark influence of dark money going to spread? Is the bank contagion going to spread, Michael? And how much worse is going to have to get, Dennis, before people recognize the utility bills, all the debt they are incurring will cause a debt deflation as the middle class evaporates and doesn't buy products?
Well, I want to comment on what Dennis just was saying, because I want to follow up the lot.
Yes.
I just wanted to say what debt deflation is.
Okay.
Debt deflation is something that, of all things, Irving Fisher, who was an economist in the 20s, in the early part of the 1900s. And he was a very free market kind of guy. And he was really famous because he was kind of like a Paul Krugman, he wrote about economics in, I think, the New York Times and stuff. So everybody knew who he was. And he's infamous because he's the one who said right before the crash, the stock market's just going to stay high forever. And he lost a lot of money. He lost a lot of family money. He was in bad shape after the crash. And so anyway, but it really caused him to stop and think. He still remained very free market, anti-regulatory and stuff. But he actually was able to focus in on what part of the problem was. And the debt deflation is that when you have a crash in the economy, not just not just the stock market, but you have a depression, and we often see prices go down, wages go down, but the amount of debt you hold is still the same. So if you bought your home in 1925 and the interest rate on it was 5%, by 1932, negative interest rates are what? Maybe they were negative by then. I'm not sure. But, what was happening was they were paying that money. They were paying their mortgage back in money that was a lot more expensive than it was before. And so that means, and so this is actually what's one of the things that's been happening to us. And one of the reasons why we never got the inflation back in the early days after the financial crisis, when they were saying, oh, all this money is going to cause inflation. No, people, they still had a lot of debt, and but they had less money to pay it back with. And so that means that they don't buy other stuff. And that's kind of a vicious cycle then that can keep an economy really down. It's the concept of debt deflation. So.
Okay. That makes sense. Les Bone says if you have to take the opportunity when you see it. If you're too slow, the momentum will be gone. It'll never happen. Oh, talk about a revolution. Oh.
Logic. He pointed out that the savings were being eroded by workers, not only their own savings, but that of their pension funds. Because when you wind down interest rates, pension funds had corporations set aside a given amount of money, or states and municipalities to set aside a given amount to pay the workers. And they almost all assumed that they were going to be able to make 8.5% a year. But now that interest rates went down to about 0.2% on government bonds, all of the pensions in this country were pushed into deficit. So who is going to rescue them? Well, you've just seen the Fed rescue uninsured bank depositors, saying no wealthy bank depositor will, even though they're not insured, no one will lose a penny. But the pension funds are going to lose as much as they have. The savers are going to lose, and by the way, the student debtors are going to have to pay their debts. The only debts that do not have to be paid are the debts owed by the wealthiest 1 to 10%. The rest of the 99% have to pay their debts. I think that's what Dennis was pointing to.
And thank you for mentioning that, because what you have here is a clear example of the.
And they pretended like the SVB bank was like some kind of, mom and pop shop loan bank or whatever, when there were so many big names that had invested in that bank. Even our own governor out here is invested in that bank. Like, it is not some mom and pop shop bank. Like, don't lie to me. Right. That's exactly what happened, is a bunch of rich people got bailed out. Even though they said it wasn't a bailout, it was a freaking bailout. But, we can't get student loan debt taken off. We can't get, anything, bring down mortgage, bring up, wages. We can't get anything. We can't get shit. But man, one little bank with a couple of rich people goes down, and they're like, we got your back. It's such bullshit.
Keep in mind, like we were talking about earlier on, the Fed is intentionally trying to keep the wages down. So, it's intentionally trying to make it harder for people to pay back their debt.
Yep.
Because they aren't going to get raises. They may even lose their jobs. And so not only are they helping the rich out, they're intentionally trying to make things harder for the average person. Yeah. This is why we have so much inequality, but this is one of the reasons.
I know. And I'm just waiting for regular people to start seeing it and get mad enough to want to make a change. Because if they don't see it here, how else are they going to see it? Because this was right in our faces. Everybody experienced the 2008 crash, and everybody has seen what they're doing with those banks right now. So they got to put those two and two together, get mad. We need to be more like France. Jeez. Really? They're like, oh, we're going to add 2 more years to the retirement age. No, the fuck you're not.
Good for them.
I know, they're amazing.
Neutralization of risk that goes on. And, this is where capitalism, the underlying challenge to the system of capitalism is that there's a number of myths that support it. And one of the myths is that we all benefit from competition. That people are on their own to go up and down by their own merits. Well, we have a massive moral hazard here that's been visited upon the country, and it needs to be addressed directly, lest the country itself fail. And there are deeper issues here that have to do with monetary policy itself. Most people are not aware that in 1913 the money supply of America was privatized with the passage of the Federal Reserve Act. It's not a coincidence that the government created almost simultaneously the federal income tax. So that instead of government issuing the money to meet the needs of the country, government started borrowing money from banks. So the government goes into debt. Our whole system's been turned upside down and the corollary today is regulatory capture you have all these agencies that cannot enforce the law because they're held captive by these financial interests, either through the executive branch or the legislative branch. And David, to answer your question directly, Citizens United case, Buckley versus Vallejo, the idea of
speech now.
We're right now in an era where we're seeing that the door was open for the corporatization of the entire government, and because these corporations essentially have a hammerlock on government policy because they can pour unlimited amounts of money through these dark money PACs into campaigns and totally upend the political fortunes of those who are either executing the laws or making them.
Well, Dennis, you just said two key words. One is the lack of competition, and the other is banking. And I should have said that the banking is the most powerful monopoly in the country. Let's look at what the banks have been paying depositors. Even though interest rates have been going way up, banks have only been paying depositors 0.2% on their deposits. Well, the reason that the banks that Silicon Valley Bank went under, and the reason other banks are going under, is that the banks are greedy. They're making a killing on higher interest rates. They're raising the prices that they charge people for mortgage loans, for bank loans, for credit card loans, but they're not giving the depositors anything more. So if you're a depositor or have enough money to you have a retirement fund or your own money, you're going to pull your money out of the bank, and instead of holding money in a bank at 0.2%, you're going to buy a short-term treasury bond at a treasury note at 4% interest, and that's exactly what was happening last Thursday and Friday. That's what caused the run. Not only for Silicon Valley Bank, but for the entire country. Americans have been pulling their money out of the banks because the banks don't pay interest. You want to get something that does pay interest, and you don't want to speculate in the stock market because that's going down. So you buy bonds, and that's why yesterday, or actually on Monday, Moody's came out and downgraded the entire banking system as being no longer really viable because the banks have gotten so they've used their monopoly power to shoot themselves in the own foot and be so greedy that they really don't play a productive function. And
so
of course,
you want to talk about how things have changed. I mean, there was a time when the banks were actually dictating rating standards to the Wall Street ratings agencies on behalf of certain clients. The other thing is, in the wake of the collapse of these three banks, I think it's time to have a whole series of questions about what were those banks' capital standards? What were their liquidity standards? What were their leverage standards? Because it becomes very clear when you see what appears to be a quick collapse was the result of practices that these banks were able to get away with because no one was looking over their shoulder, and they were basically the banking equivalent of honor par. And I'm sorry, that didn't work. And what's happening now, very interesting, is that, look, I'm not a fan of so-called wokeism, whatever people call that, but they're trying to blame the collapse of the banks on certain cultural and social and racial minorities, which is, could cause heaven to grow hair. It is absolutely a catastrophe that was engineered inside the banks, not because they suddenly wanted to show themselves in a more progressive light, but because they could have been using that as a cover to just engage in any kind of sharp practice.
Dennis, I must say that you worry me, though, because it sounds like you may even be pushing for things like better braking systems in trains and things like that. So I think you're a little out of control right now.
Yeah, right. Dave, how about better braking systems in banking, right?
Yeah.
What he said about rating systems and management, you can ask these questions, but who's going to answer them? Well, the answer is who was in charge of overseeing the banks? Who were the bank examiners? Well, the bank examiners and the bank regulators were all, as Dennis just said, appointed by the banks. If you were blacklisted by the banks, you'd be treated like the banks wanted to treat Dennis. You were considered overqualified for the position. The banks wanted examiners who would treat them as their clients, who thought that, well, we're here as the Federal Reserve examiner or the Federal Home Loan Bank examiner to really help the banks get by. We're their protectors, we're their guardians. And one of the problems is that there are many bank regulatory agencies, and banks get to choose the regulatory agency that governed them. And the Silicon Valley Bank chose the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, which is what, if you're going to stretch the envelope, if you're going to do something that is wildly risky, you want the Federal Home Loan Bank Board to be your examiner, because they were the people who didn't see the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s. They were the most corrupt pro-banker. The customer is always right examiners there were. And the funny thing is that Silicon Valley Bank doesn't make home loans. It made big loans to the high-tech industries and also to the governor of California, Newsom, and his winery. He kept his money there, but they don't make home loans. But any bank can choose the Home Loan Bank Examiner Board precisely because they qualify for believing that whatever the banks decide to do must be reasonable.
Michael, I want to just cut in a little bit and point out.
Dennis,
So not only have they deregulated, but the people that are supposed to be regulating them, they have hired themselves, which they're a bank who does loans, but the people that are supposed to be regulating them is some kind of home loan company. So
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
corrupt and so dinky.
Yeah, it's called regulatory capture. And
They have a word for it, so that we'll never know.
Huh?
They
I'm
have a
sorry?
word for it, so we'll never know.
Mhm. Yeah,
Sure.
and and one of the things I think that's that kind of a more subtle point that was in there is that we've had this attitude of like the government should be like a business, and the government
Mhm.
should function, and it should uh, think about customer service and things like that, just like a business. Well,
Mhm.
this is the kind of problem that can come about because of that kind of thinking. Because, you have the regulators who see, as he was saying, like the bank, like that's their customer. No, that's not supposed to be their customer. The bank, isn't a partner that they're in business with, or it shouldn't
Right.
be. The
Right.
bank is an entity that you're looking at to make sure they're not doing anything illegal, and making sure that the people who are invested in it are going to be protected, because there's so much incentive for there to be, for those banks to uh, not engage in their fiduciary behavior, not act like they're, not act in the benefits of the clients, the people that deposit their money with them. And so, this is just one of the other things that kind of has driven me nuts about these many, many years of talking like about the government like it's a business, and like it should act like a business, and we should have a relationship with it. Because what it does is it just makes it more corrupt. It's also an important point to keep in mind. This is why we need to keep the civil service functional. We have some politicians that really actually what they want to do is they want to destroy the civil service. And of course, I have to I have to make the claim that as a federal employee, I definitely have a vested interest in this subject, so I got to bring that up. But my point is, if we don't have a civil service system, we have we could go back to what we had before, which was a patronage system, and that will
Mhm.
only make the corruption worse.
Right. I agree. All right, let's continue. I'm going to run to the bathroom really quick, too.
The lead up to the Iraq war, you spoke on the floor of Congress 341 times about Iraq, and you saw no evidence. You spoke 155 times on Iran, and then one great advertising person put it, you had the eyes that saw through the lies. Okay, what are the lies you're seeing today around banking and Nord Stream and these other things? I may just veer off a little bit, but you've been confronting some of these egregious misstatements.
Well, it begins with, let me talk about this conceptually. We have a breakdown in trust in society, which is affecting everything. People putting their money in banks is a matter of trust. What banks do with that money will either confirm or undermine the trust that people have in the banks. Government has to play a role in making sure that people's assets are going to be protected from any sharp practices. I mean, those are what we hope will happen. But what we have found out in the past, and what we're finding out again, is that government does not perform its role as a protector of the public interest. And when that happens on matters of the environment or the economy or any other thing in the market, the people of the United States are going to find that they're going to lose investments. They're going to, in some cases, lose their businesses. I mean, think of all the people out in Silicon Valley and within the reach of the banks that have now gone down, who really have set businesses that had a lot of drive and a lot of hope and a lot of passion, and they needed to make sure there was a cop on the beat to protect their aspirations, to protect the jobs that they created. And yes, the government stepped in and said, okay, nobody's going to get hurt. But the fact of the matter is that all of us get hurt, because if you had another $9 trillion to the 31 trillion, and even before this happened, there was already predictions that America is going to go to over $50 trillion in debt within 10 years. When you look at that, it means there's a lack of fiscal discipline, which harms the country. It harms our ability to in international trade. It puts us in a direction of deflation one day and the next day hyperinflation. So we're really at risk here as Americans. Our economy is at risk, and I'm sure the president understands that, which is why he put a stop on the closing or the destruction of these banks. But the fact of the matter is, we're not dealing with the underlying causes here. This is
an issue of trust. I wanted to ask Mike. Go ahead.
This is a tourniquet
Well,
on a wound. It's not fixing the wound.
Well, you understand this, Dennis. I'm not, because we've spoken about deindustrialization for 20 years. What you've described is exactly that America's deindustrializing. If Americans have to pay such high prices for their homes, if they have to go so deeply into debt just to have a place to live or to rent, if they have to borrow from the banks and run into credit card debt in order to just meet their basic needs, how they're going to have to earn so much money that it prices American industry out of world markets. That's why American companies have all moved abroad. They can't afford to pay American labor when American labor's living costs have to be paid to the financial sector and the real estate sector, which is part of the financial sector that you've just been describing. That's the real problem. The banks are responsible for deindustrializing the country, making it so by squeezing labor's living standards while raising the price of everything that labor needs to buy.
Michael, what do you say to people who say banks lend out money to businesses all the time? That's their main function. But you point out in your books that 80% of the money is for what?
For mortgages. Banks don't lend money for startups.
No.
Private stock initial public offerings in the stock market raises money for new capital investment. Banks only lend against collateral that's already in place, not to create new means of production, but you can pledge it. But they do make loans to corporations to buy other corporations. They make loans to corporate raiders. They make loans for leveraged buyouts because you can make more money by borrowing money to buy a corporation, taking it over, running it into debt, breaking it up into parts, firing the labor and moving it abroad than you can do by employing American labor. So the problem, it's economy. This is a serious structural problem. We're not dealing with just one bank going bad because it was not competently managed. We're talking about what Dennis was talking about, the polarization that is crushing American prosperity.
Michael, I want to refer back to something you said a moment ago when you talk about deindustrialization, because this and I put a fine point on it. America used to make cars. We were the leader in the world in manufacturing cars. We were the leader in the world in steel. We were the leader in the world unchallenged in aerospace. We were the leader in the world on shipping. Now that was part of our strategic industrial base, and it was a strategic economic base. It helped protect our country, but it also helped give people very good middle class jobs. As we engaged in these trade agreements, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, NAFTA, and China trade, and other trades with certain regions, what we did is we moved the good paying jobs out. What did we replace it with in the economy? We financialized the economy. So we don't make things anymore. We create financial products. And this is where our nation, which used to be the leader in manufacturing, this is where our nation has taken a turn that if we do not correct the course, can only lead again and again and again to one financial crisis after another. There's a point at which people on one hand lose confidence in the system, and the other one is the system just doesn't have the capacity to recover without the inevitable effects of hyperinflation.
Will either party have the courage to do what is necessary, which is certainly increasing taxes for the uber rich who have just grown far out of proportion, the growth exponential wealth, as Michael was describing, which compounds the wealth over a period of time, and the necessity that people who are working get a share of the profits, that they're able to organize, that they're able to share in the immense wealth that we create in this country for the top. Will either party address those issues about income or wealth taxes or reining in the power of this dark money?
Well, I could give a brief answer to that, which is it's unlikely. We're not looking at a Rooseveltian period here where those who were
I find it stunning. Quick tangent that I find both parties with huge lackings in different ways. I was stunned when my party, I'm a Democrat, when my party attacked somebody who writes books like Griftopia about the Wall Street collapse of Matt Taibbi, calling him a so-called journalist, which I was joking about before, who had the courage to actually write. Or they also go after Glenn Greenwald, who wrote one of the great books, with liberty and justice for some, just a couple. But you saw how they went after Brand, the comedian. It's just sort of stunning to me that where is their patriotism rather than their party? When does patriotism and concern for the people that elected them come in, Dennis?
Well, when the people are hurting enough, when they're ready to basically say, look, this is a party moment, and the party isn't, the party's not working for us.
Well, I think on that sort of depressing note, I guess we might want to end this up. I don't want to leave people on a downer at this point in time, but I really was happy that the two of you could talk and talk about the systemic problems that are cropping up in this country and why these banks failed and why wealth is being redistributed up the economic pyramid, and no one says anything about it. I call the GOP sometimes the greed-only party because they will never vote for tax increases, but they seem to be better on matters of war and peace right now. The Democratic Party seems to be all war all the time. I'm sorry. Okay, they'll fight till the last Ukrainian dies, which is sickening me. I have 4 children. I think about how the grief that never goes away as your society and your families are torn asunder. So, any last thoughts from either of you?
Michael?
Well, it's very striking that the Republicans are saying that the war is wrecking the whole economy. Dennis talked about how the steel industry can get going again. Well, it got going by blowing up the gas pipeline, and without gas and Russian oil, you can't make steel in Germany anymore. So the war really is not only has turned out not to be only against fighting to the last Ukrainians. It's making Europe broke, pushing Europe into a chronic long-term depression, and really ending German industry. And America says, well, why don't you move your steel-making companies to the United States, where we have cheap gas and oil, and now that you have to pay 6 times as much for energy, and energy is really what you make GDP out of. So America's strategy in the world is saying, well, we realize that we're losing competition to China and Asia and India and the whole rest of the world, but at least we can lock in our control of Europe, and we can make money off Europe, Canada, and Australia, and at least we can keep going there by essentially acting as a rentier. And it's the result is something that at a certain point, it's driving other countries away. And I don't think there's any truth at all that Biden is working for the Chinese government as a paid agent. I think that's just a vicious rumor. But what he's done is force, by the sanctions on Russia, he's forced Russia to give China energy at much lower prices than anywhere else in the world. The effect of Biden's strategy is to enormously increase Chinese competition and Iranian competition and Asian competition against the United States. It's ironic. And the sanctions against Russia have made Russia decide, okay, we're going to become autonomous and independent.
You know, what I would like to do is to conclude this with the idea that perhaps we can go deeper into this discussion.
Jimmy, you're on mute.
Sorry, I always do this. I don't want to stop the show because it's so good. So I'm like mute myself so I can keep watching it. No, but what I really enjoy or what I really liked of what he said right there is something that I've been saying for a while on my show, as well, as that we've been bullying these other countries for so long that we keep thinking our bullying is gonna, and eventually win. But it's like all these other countries are like, well, we're tired of bullying, so we're fucking done with you, and we're just gonna go off and do our own thing now and be your competition, and you're not gonna like it. And we definitely are probably been sidelined and not expected something like that to happen, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. In my job, there was a year when I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but we were selling a lot of chicken to Russia. And so there became some issue, and they clamped down on sending the chicken to Russia. And so we bought it, gave it to food banks. But the Russian response was, well, we're going to, have our own chicken production industry. And that's what they did. And
Yep.
so, we lost a market because of that. It is, there's geopolitical factors that come into this. And one of the things that's unfortunate about economists is they never look at that. They only want to look at economics. But a lot of what's going on is geopolitical stuff too. And so, I really don't know what's happening, but it could be that there's a faction in the government that says maybe we need to reindustrialize, and we'll do it at the expense of, Europe. I don't know. That I'm just speculating, but there are various factors that come about, and so it's really so important for us to have have a way to discuss these things, talk about all of this stuff, and for people to understand at a deeper level, not just the economics, but the things that can affect the economics and how the economics can affect other things. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a broad issue, and
Yeah. Well, this show is almost over. I didn't realize we've been watching this long. All right, let's finish this off.
In a future conversation with respect to number one, how America's international policies, specifically with respect to war and the building up of a massive armament, undermines us here at home. That's number one. Number two is how America's insistence on the unipolar moment, as you alluded, Michael, driven other nations together in economic alliances that I believe inevitably will lead to the decline of the dollar and will create circumstances where the American economy is going to lose the elasticity it's had over the last 50 years as a result of the dollar's primacy. So maybe we could get into that in the future. I want to thank Dave Kelly for convening this and moderating this discussion. And Michael, it's good to see you.
That was interesting. Hold on. He said a really interesting word. Unipolarity. Was that what it is? Unipolar, is that where you get a bunch of countries like NATO getting a bunch of countries together into one? Because I've been listening to the news talking about Russia and China and the word multipolarity. That's been a buzzword that's been roaming around as well. So what is the difference between unipolarity and multipolarity when it comes to NATO and probably eventually what's going to be BRICS?
What he was saying is we've had a hegemony. Like, after the fall of the Soviet Union, basically we were the only superpower. And so we've been able to control much of the dialogue of what's going on in the world. We can,
right.
We do it in various different ways with trade. We do it with, our bases and, things like that. We do it with the World Bank and the IMF. And so basically unipolarity means basically one power in the world that is really kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to call the shots, but we are calling the shot. It has been calling the shot. And so what's happening is Russia and, well, China certainly is, an economic powerhouse that can, compete and surpass us. And then Russia is, not in the same league, but them together. So basically what it's saying is there's more than one influence, more than one powerful influence in the world. And what Kucinich was saying is that, the unipolarity it's really problematic because, as you were saying, we bullied so many countries and we've done just terrible things. And, we have engaged in these wars where we take over natural resources and, destroy countries. We're abusing our power. And
big time.
And so we need a multipolar world.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Okay. I agree. I like that. I like that idea. Because for a long time, you start to wonder, like, is there any other option than this, one world order where America is the ruler of all these other countries for no fucking reason whatsoever? Even in England, it's like America just kind of tells them what to do as well, even though they're just like us. I mean, we came from them. So, it's trying to figure out for the longest time thinking, well, I guess there's nothing else other than a one world order, which, I mean, if I'm trying to get to like, okay, so my idea is my main goal, my long-term goal is world peace. And to me, the only way that I ever saw fit for that was the one world order where everybody's just together into one. But with this unipolarity that you're just talking about, yeah, you're right. With the bullying that America does, we can't have something like that. But if we can have this multipolarity where everybody in the whole entire world, all the countries are working together, but they're all unique in their own way and they all produce in their own way, which is kind of that word that I always talk about too, Sonder, that I absolutely adore. The fact that every single human being is living in a truly unique experience that nothing about, and every person is experiencing that. And having that brought out to a bigger picture of, countries and societies and communities in that way actually probably is a better idea than a unipolarity version. So,
well, I mean, if we would have been if we would be a better example. But
That-
what happened was at the end, after the Soviet Union fell apart, we had an opportunity to have a peaceful world and have this peace dividend that they used to talk about. You were pretty little then, so I don't know if you recall that, but they talked about a peace dividend, meaning we didn't have to invest in all this huge military stuff. But we have, in the US, we have a faction of people who have an extreme amount of power, the neocons, and they're, basically backed by the defense industry. And so, Ike's discussion about the military industrial complex, well, that, it came true because these people decided, well, hey, we're the one, we're on top now, so it's time to flex some muscle. And that's what's happened. But they, it's destroying the world.
It is.
Just not right.
I know.
And Russia and China came out with some statements a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you probably heard about that, but I mean, some of the things you were saying were what the Chinese were saying too.
Mhm.
So let's try to have a world where we can live in peace and we can be productive instead of fighting. Defense spending is never productive. It can only be,
It's the team mentality. We're never going to lose that. America is so ingrained in the there is no I in team kind of bullshit. The good guys versus bad guys, superhero mentality, black and white. There's never a huge gray zone. It's always either you're bad or you're good. You're evil or you're a saint. And there's no in between. And we've just automatically assumed that we're the superheroes, we're the good guys, and everybody else that's against us is the bad guys no matter what. And that's why I enjoy listening to RT News or France News and stuff, is because I like to hear the other side, because I don't look at it as black and white. I see it as a gray. Yes, I'm not for Putin. Of course, the guy murders anybody that tries to compete against him for the leader position. Of course, he murders LGBTQ people. Of course, I'm not okay with Putin, but the people aren't Putin, the people that live in Russia are not Putin. And if the people are saying something that is opposite of what my country is saying, I'm going to listen to them because they're still human beings. So
Right. They have a perspective. And, that was one of the best things that happened to me when I was in graduate school. And I got, to know and live with and work with people from other countries and really, understand their perspective and how America was seen from, their point of view. It really was, it was an eye-opening experience. And it's one I'm really grateful for. So,
definitely.
And,
Same with me, especially with this whole Russia stuff and Ukraine and all of that. Like my entire 20s was spent with Russians and Ukrainians. Those were all my bosses. They were my security guards. They were my managers of all the bars that I worked at. That's all my 20s was spent around. I remember sitting on a bench outside of the bar teaching my Russian security guard. His name is Igor. Okay, that's how Russian he is. The difference between the word fan, the English word fan, how there was, the turning fans, there's the fans that girls wear, and then there's the fans like I'm a fan of, a celebrity. And I remember, I still to this day remember teaching. These people are just amazing, great people. And so that's where I kind of I humanized myself with those people before I knew of any kind of Red Scare or, Russia stuff. This was in my 20s before I cared about politics. So me and Russians, we're fucking cool. Like I'm totally awesome with Russians. So to hear our government, especially the Democrat side, who I went and door knocked for Bernie Sanders for the Democratic Party. I gave money to Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Party. Them going around saying that Russia's all these bad guys. I'm just like, how's my buddies doing? How are you guys? Are you guys okay? Fuck these stupid, American politicians, damn it, so it's hard for me. It's a different experience for me. So
it's not a good world to live in.
It's not. No,
so and there's so much that we could do with medical care, and so much more that we could do to make the world a better place. And I think, there have been times when in this country when people did believe in more. We've kind of been brainwashed, and we've, been lax. Um, and there's also been a lot of pushing back again. I mean, well, we've had a lot of government policies that have, really been net bad for the left. Much persecution. Remember when I talked about after World War I, what was going on, and but there used to be a lot of socialists in this country. There used to be, and like the hippies and stuff. It's time that we start thinking more about what is possible, and start seeing the positive side of society and caring about others.
Yep.
And basically, it's time we give up, or at least let's go some of this individualism stuff.
Yeah, the rugged individualism. That shit drives me insane. Absolutely insane. All right, we got about 6 more minutes left, so I want to put on something funny for us. That way we can have a good laugh. I don't know how long ago this was. Oh no, this was on March 20th, so it was really recent. So of course this happened in Florida because only the best stuff happens in Florida. So a state representative is reading names into the record, and apparently they had a couple of trolls there. So let's watch and hear him read out some of the names.
Waves in opposition. Anita Dick is an opponent. Waves in opposition. Holden Hiscock is also an opponent. Waves in opposition.
Okay.
Anita Dick.
Really quick, I have to show this right here. Do you see her face? As soon as he said it, he has no idea what he's saying. No fucking clue. But look at her face. Just the face right there. She knew it. She knew he said Anita Dick. You gotta love Florida, man. Only in Florida would shit like this happen. I want to know who the person is that gave those names out so I can personally thank them, because this is the kind of stuff that you do when you go to like City Hall and watch these City Hall meetings. Yeah, exactly. See, Warren would have put, "Hey, would you blow me?" Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Oh, I love that. All right. I'm so glad we ended that on a funny note, because leave it to Florida to always bring us a laugh or a shock, all emotions. Florida is just great to bring out people's emotions of every kind.
Well, I hope this was helpful.
Yeah.
There was some educational component to it.
Yes. No, I
It's just
really enjoyed it.
depressing.
The whole banks, the economy, and we even brought in like SVB Bank with it all, so we could tie it into something relevant that's happening right now. So no, I really enjoyed it. Wasn't expecting it, so I'm excited. It's so much better than what did I have up? Candace Owens bags on like the disabled community for wanting to have themselves represented in modeling ads, like clothing ads.
Uh-huh.
It's sad, of course, but it's drama. Or like Anna Kasparian's recent tweet about being a birthing person. So I just had a bunch of drama stuff in here today. So thank you for giving me something different, because I really don't want to get into the drama of stuff.
Well, and also the discussion on that video really kind of goes back to ultimately it kind of brings back around the MMT conference that they're having at Willamette University, the public banking. And so, because what we see is right now we have so much greed, so much extraction, so much pain and suffering caused by private banking.
Mm-hmm.
Let's let's think about public banking and use
Right.
banks as a way of helping people. Even if we, create the banks in a way that there is a profit, maybe those profits could be plowed back into the economy and make things better for people.
And get people to start fighting back. There was a term somebody used recently. I don't remember who it was. It might have been an economist or something like Richard Wolff. They said that Americans are, how they think now, are like embarrassed millionaires. So it was like they used to have the money, but they don't have the money anymore, and they think they're going to get that money. So they're slightly just temporarily embarrassed millionaires, is what he called Americans. And I thought that worked really well because, like we're saying, the rugged individualism, we're all sitting here broke as shit, working paycheck to paycheck, thinking in 20 years we're going to be millionaires. That's that temporarily embarrassed millionaires, because everybody thinks, and they spend their entire life trying to get to that point, and then they die and they don't ever get to that point. And then the next generation comes and repeats the same thing, because we were never taught any better, because the American dream is becoming a millionaire or something, and it's supposed to be alive.
Yeah. And we aren't realizing that there's a fundamental problem in that people will never become millionaires because the game is rigged.
Exactly.
It's rigged.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I know. Me and Warren were talking recently about, because he just learned about the landlord's game, how the landlord's game, or the Monopoly used to be the landlord's game, and they took away the landlord's game and just profit off of the monopoly part. And so it kind of is a really good explanation of how our economy works right now, is the monopoly game. But to show people a different perspective, me and Warren were trying to figure out ways to make the landlord's game into a playable video game, or something like maybe like Cards Against Humanity type thing, where it's a card game where you can play it digitally online with your friends, to get people to realize and see a different perspective of how an economy can work, because we only think that capitalism was like the end all be all, and not realizing that, when we hear, oh, we used to barter and trade, it's kind of like a fantasy when we hear it. We don't believe that it's real, that it could be real, so getting people to play a game to where they can kind of visualize and see and experience what life could be like differently with the landlord's game, I think would be really fun.
Right. That, the one of the most powerful things propagandist organizations can do is make you think that there's no alternative. This is it. Like Margaret Thatcher, Tina, there is no alternative. It's a bunch of crap. We create society. We create the economy. We can create it in a way that works for people. We don't have to have a society where a few people at the top basically get to lord it over everybody else.
Right. All it is now is just a businessy version of all the monarchies in history and empires in history. Just instead of kings and queens, we've got CEOs.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. Yep. And we got out of feudalism. Let's not go back in.
Right. Exactly. Unless that's just how, society ends up going. Like maybe that's just the way that people kind of just tend and vibe towards, is, with hundreds and thousands of years of us doing the same thing over and over again, just falling economies and people just giving up and starting new ones. Maybe this is just kind of how it goes. This is just the way that it's supposed to go. Think you got that peak and then that's it. It's done after that, which you got to experience the peak.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like I want everybody to have a childhood like not my particular childhood, but I want everybody to grow up in a society where they have some hope, and they can feel like things are going to get better, and they can feel like, I can provide things for my kids, so that they can have a good life.
Same.
I just feel really strongly that we shouldn't give up.
Yep. Same. I know. There's always going to be that hope in the back. All right. Well, you don't have a show, so what are you doing this week?
Oh, well, tonight I think we're going to go out to eat, and I need to work on some videos.
That's right. I know. I want to figure out how you want to work those. Like, how do you want to do that? Because I can get the stuff to you. I just want to know how you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay. So, well, anyway, have a great
Yeah.
weekend, Jimmy.
Okay.
It was fun,
Yes.
and I hope it was helpful. So,
yes, I'm about
take
to get
care.
off here myself. So good to see you again. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You got it.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Maybe by then I'll think of something to say.
Okay. You're good. You had a lot to say today, so that's awesome. Good
Okay,
video.
take care.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Yes. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, you guys. Let's see what we got going on.